And I am going to go into student preview mode in Blackboard so that you can see. And I'm going to go into our module 1, and you'll notice down here your 1.4 solution is due now by noon on 8 September, and the assessment is due by the start of class on 8 September. So you don't have to jump into this right away, but it's actually good to do that. Once we hit this barrier and class begins on 8 September, whenever you see due by start of class, there's a hard stop. So I'm not allowed to extend. Sometimes I'm allowed to extend the deadline. If you ever see due by start of class, that's a clear indication that we have a hard stop. The reason for this is we're going to release the answer key for the assessment. And once the answer key has been posted at the start of class, and we review assessment items in class and record those things, we can't allow that version of the assessment to continue to be accessible. All assessments that start are going to prompt you with reminders. So as we go in here, and actually we want to go back a level. Let's see. There we go. Here's our assessment module at the end. It's going to say, this assessment is formative. So what does that mean? It means that we're committed to mastery learning here in the course. And it also means that you're going to get to retake it. You'll get to take an alternative version. So when you see the key term formative, that means that as your concepts and understanding, as your knowledge, skills, and abilities in the module are progressing, we want to help you assess your progress. So the purpose of this assessment is distinctly and intentionally designed to benefit you, not me as the instructor, okay? We want to understand how much you've learned from the module concepts, and then we want to present the items in a manner where if there's a mistake that's made, it's clearly indicated, and then you have a chance to refine your understanding, and you get to take it again. So it's important to understand that formative assessments are different than summative assessments. The cumulative or summative assessments for the course are the midterm and the final exams. And those are intentionally engineered and crafted for my benefit. So I can, after a point at a certain time, it's like a snapshot in the middle of the semester. I want to know, okay, so how has your knowledge, skills, and abilities progressed to that point in the semester? It's also used for me to assess my course and the content, the curriculum. So the good news is that your retake, the second attempt at your formative assessment, a lot of the items are recycled. They might be modified a little bit or adapted a little bit. But the one thing I want you to understand about this particular assessment, the first attempt to maximize your score will never be easier, except for the first attempt. So what am I saying? When you attempt a module assessment for the first time, the items are going to be simpler. They're going to be more basic examples. Essentially, if you want to maximize your score, if you're one of those people who don't like to go back over things, don't want to redo things, don't want to spend more time than you have to, I'm going to encourage you to spend the extra time to review your study guide. Make sure you know everything in the study guide. Review all the links in the study guide. When you click on the links, it takes you to a website. There's going to be stuff in there that's subject for review on the assessment. You're also going to have a reading assignment in the textbook. You should have read the textbook. You should have completed the solution. You should be familiar with what's in the references folder. for notes and diagrams. Or in the resources folder, you should have watched any of the YouTubes, become familiar with the resources in the resources folder. If you do this before your first attempt, you might max your score, which means you don't have to worry about a reconciliation of errors or mistakes. You don't have to really do the retake. You can use that for other purposes, right? So you'll always have your easiest shot at maxing your score out to begin with on your first attempt. When we reconcile errors and provide another alternative assessment, the difficulty level and complexity of the questions increases slightly. That means we want to be sure that you're really getting the information, the knowledge, skills, and abilities. Are there any questions about what we've covered so far about the nature of formative assessments, and in particular, how your first attempt is going to be your easiest shot at the highest score? Any questions?
No question.
Okay. Now, the items are randomly sorted. So each of you are going to have a different version of the same items. Also, the answer choices are randomly sorted. So if you ever just like if you were ever trying the Lifeline attempt where you text a buddy and you're like, hey, what about question 6? Oh, the answer is C. That's not going to work well because everybody has a different version. So the order of questions is changed for everyone, and the answer order is changed for everyone. It's important to understand that you have 30 minutes. Once you start, you cannot stop. That means that you need to make sure your personal technology is prepared before you begin. Clear any updates, reboot and restart. If you have a browser with 37 tabs open, close all of those tabs. Close all your apps, reboot your system. Connect a power supply, right? You need to have access to reliable internet. Now, what happens if your internet is disrupted? A lot of times, if you just sit tight and then reconnect, you can pick up where you left off. But you have to make sure that your personal needs and your personal technology is ready, because it's difficult to just reset an assessment. If you run into a problem and you've lost your credit for items completed, take a screenshot, hit the print screen key, get into email, paste the screen into email and say, my power has been disrupted. My internet service was cut off. Here's the screen. If you want me to reset your assessment, I can reset it, but it usually means I have to clear the attempt. So if you completed all but one of the items, you would lose all the answers you've done before. Okay? Now, nobody gets to see the answers or what they did until we review in class. So it's going to be normal to finish, and then you go back in there and it'll say, well, you've already taken this attempt, right? Okay, so once the 30 minutes hits, it's going to close the window. If you go past 30 minutes, it will end the assessment for you. Okay, if you tell me you've had a problem, I'm going to go in and look at your assessment. If it showed you used all 30 minutes and you just didn't finish a couple of items, we're done, because you used all 30 minutes. And nothing personal, just everybody has 30 minutes to answer 10 questions. That's an average of 3 minutes per question. If you have any of your stuff together and you know what we're doing, that's a cakewalk. You can do that blindfolded. Does everybody understand how you need to prep your personal technology and what happens if there's a crash? How you need to take a screenshot?
Understood.
Okay. Now
How would you take a screenshot if you crashed? Like, let's say if your PC crashed or your internet left and the page, how would you give proof that that was the correct page that you were on?
Well, normally when it crashes, if the power goes out or the internet is disrupted, you'll get an unresponsive screen, but it'll still show something on there. And then eventually it'll say, connection disrupted or unresponsive, something will pop up.
Yeah.
And usually, there's usually a pop-up. And if you hit the print screen key, that's what you paste into your email. If you're having problems with using your print screen key, you can always snap a picture of your smartphone, with your smartphone, and that's also good. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so there's a couple of test items, and you're going to see this test information again. It's going to reiterate the same thing again, right? It'll say, right, you'll be notified when the time expires. You may continue or submit. Warnings will occur at half the time, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so I'm going to show you some of these questions. And in particular, many of the questions are multiple choice. You just choose the best answer. But there are some questions, and I want you to see this, that are multiple answer. And I want to speak about this in particular. On most of our assessments, multiple answers are worth more points. That's your first clue that there's more than one answer that's probably correct. Here's the part I need you to understand. We have some creative students in the past who said, oh, select all that apply. I'm just going to check them all. And if you check all of them and there is an answer that does not apply, it will deduct points. You can actually go into the hole. Let me repeat that. If you get a multiple answer question and you're like, I'm going to outsmart the test, I'm just going to, I'm going to pick all these, right? Because the circumstances could be different, and hey, all of those answers could apply, right? I'm going to make sure I get all my credit. If you're not supposed to select an answer because it does not apply, and you select it, you can go into the hole with the points for the assessment. So now, if you think that it's likely an answer applies, click it. Don't play safe. But don't be cavalier and check all of them either. Okay? Let's repeat that. Don't be cavalier and check all of them, but by the same token, don't be safe where oh, I'm not absolutely sure if that's a correct. If it seems like a reasonable answer and it tracks with what we've been talking about in class, if you're pretty sure that it's likely, click it, select it. Your first instinct is usually correct. Okay? Any questions about multiple answer questions? Now, I've limited the number of multiple answer questions because I don't want to drive people crazy. Why do we include multiple answer questions? You will find that a lot of the certification exams for tech certifications, like networking and cybersecurity, they're scenario-based and they have a lot of multi-answer questions because more than one concept will apply where others don't. And they want to see whether or not you can read into a scenario and then identify all of the relevant things that are important, right? Okay, so why am I doing that? So you get good practice, because if you want to get a certification later in your program, we're going to be offering boot camps for technical certifications. You can finish with a degree and have hardware certification, networking certification, cybersecurity certification, systems administration certification, developer certification in the bag when you walk across the podium. You'll stand out head and shoulders above other graduates. You'll have an advantage when you go in for job interviews. They'll say, oh, you've already got a certification. So that's one reason why we're doing this. Any questions before I clear my screen here?
Okay. Yes, for yes, for the for the for the assessment, do I have to you use a calculator for my assessment?
Well, that's a great question. So a lot of times I'll be talking about how something is done without using a calculator. I wanted you to know how to work this without a calculator so that you would know the process of working it without a calculator. There's nothing to restrict you from using a calculator to check your answers or to come up with the answers. okay? So I don't want you to feel guilty because you reach for a calculator. And the use of a calculator is not prohibited in the assessment. I want you to feel free to use the resources that you have, okay?
Okay, got it.
Now, remember, we're doing this assessment for your benefit. So we're not trying to include gotchas. And if you ever go through an assessment and you feel like, oh, Kentop cheated me, I want you to send email, and I want you to give me a screenshot or explain, hey, on this item, you know, this is wrong. If you catch an error on my part, unintentional, because we revise these questions, sometimes when they're revised, there's a mistake that's made, honest mistake. You'll get additional credit. I'll post additional credit. The last thing I would share with you is that there is an extra credit question, and you don't have to answer that one. But if you do and you get it correct, then you can have higher than the maximum score for your assessment. And so if you ever see extra credit, sometimes those extra credit items become actual questions in the next version. Okay. Any other questions before we start? Okay, so I intended to give you the rest of the class session today to take the assessment, but you do have until the start of our next class to take it and finish it. And so now I will tell you this much. I go out onto the internet, onto Google, and I'm just sharing a friendly warning for creative folks who love to hack everything, including assessments. There's a wonderful website called Coursera where students have made the unfortunate mistake of sharing assessments online with everybody. I will consider it cheating if anyone in my courses posts an active exam or assessment, doesn't matter, right, during the semester. It's okay if you do it afterwards and say, hey, these are the assessments from, I just finished networking, here are the assessments, I want to be a course hero. I'm sorry, it's not Coursera, it's Course Hero. So coursehero.com, right? Oh, I want to be a hero to my fellow students. There are ways to share course materials legitimately that don't cause problems with copyright infringement or ownership or any of that. I like it when students share resources, but I want you to know clearly where the line is drawn. A good example would be a screenshot of this right here. If I go to Course Hero and I see a screenshot of this right here, I can find out from where the geographic location was. Just remember, I have 20 years of work in cybersecurity, okay? So I had a student in a previous course that posted all of his answers, all of the items from all the assessments, and then had an alias name out there and pretended he wasn't who he said he was. And I nailed him. And I found out his IP address was from this internet service provider, and it was this physical address on the street. And when I was on St. Thomas once a month to consult with St. Thomas students, I went to his house. Then I showed him the screen. Then I shut him down. Now, I didn't ruin his life. He didn't get an F in the course. I just said, that's a no-no. You shouldn't be doing this, right? So that's one last thing I would like to share with you. The whole intent of this assessment is to help you as a student. So if you post answers out there for other students, you're not really helping them develop their knowledge, skills, and understanding. You're actually hurting them because they're not having to think about any answers. When it comes to the real assessments, the midterms and the finals, people don't do well. It's very obvious. There's an old saying, you will know a tree by its fruit, right? It's good fruit, good tree, good fruit. Hey, everybody's happy. If it's rotten fruit, it doesn't take long before everybody to know something's rotten. Okay? All right. So that would be the last that I have to share with you about assessments in our course, particularly the module assessments, the formative assessments. Are there any final questions before we clear? And I wish you well for your holiday weekend.
It's coming that Kentop is on me again. So I don't have to enter the assessment right now. I I can take it like doing the weekends and so, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if you wanted to start the holiday weekend early, I wanted to provide you with the latitude to flex your schedule to the extent that that matters to you. So yeah,
Hey, Siri,
good question. Yeah,
we're having class on Monday, right?
we don't. That's
No?
another excellent question. So Monday is a national holiday. The campus is closed. And so because the campus is closed, I will put out a notice that says we are not hosting class on Monday, but you have it from me directly right now. So that's why Tuesday is the cutoff, right? So the next class we'll have is Tuesday at 1 p.m. next week on 8 September. Thank you for asking.
So you said the assessment that we're doing is easier on the first attempt, right?
Correct.
What makes it harder on the extra attempts or the other attempts?
That's a great question too. So when we revise an edition of an assessment, I have to change the questions up so that they're uniquely different. And I start with very straightforward examples. All right. So here's a great example. I have a hexadecimal value of 1110. What is the decimal value for, and whenever you see italics, you should read it out loud and then inflex your voice just like I do, because that is like really intentional. Sometimes I don't try to call attention to it, see if people miss it, right? So we're not talking about a binary value. We're not talking about a hex value. We're talking about the decimal value, right? Very straightforward. Some folks will go ahead and, you know, they'll say a bit shift to the right and they'll slide this to the right and they'll pick one of these because they're doing the bit shift thing with binary, but they missed that, right? So when I'm doing another version of this, I have to change it up. And a lot of times when you change up the format or details of a question, it just becomes more complex. There's a natural, it's not done intentionally, but there's only so many straightforward basic questions you can ask, right? Take the extra credit example, right? In your study guide, there was other material, right? And we talked about one of these a lot in class, but the simple truth is there was deeper material. So when I have extra credit questions on the next version, I have to draw deeper, or I have to go further into the study guide, into the links of the study guide, onto the websites that are linked to the study guide, and so on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and as time goes on, we want you to get stronger and stronger. So the first pass usually identifies the weak areas. And then if we make it a little more interesting on the second round and you get it right, that's something we call integrity. It means our assessments are really checking to see if your understanding is improving, right? I mean, if you have another basic question, you know, what's the
I got
today?
one more question.
Someone else had a question?
Oh yeah, I can say, which section of the notes will help us the most with
Where
shifting the binary?
Where are the notes that are the most helpful?
Yeah.
So in your study guide, there's a written explanation of binary shifting, but there's also two videos, the worksheet videos, part 1 and part 2. We walk through those and we take each one by example. So if you review that before you take the test, that's probably going to help. Great question. How are we doing? Everybody good?
Yeah.